The rain hammered against the corrugated iron roof of the cottage, each drop a tiny percussionist in a macabre symphony. I'd been lost for hours, relying solely on the crumbling map my grandfather had left behind, the one with Silas's reach. The valley itself seemed to warp reality. Familiar landmarks vanished, replaced by impossibly tall pines and an unsettling silence broken only by the rain. I pulled out my phone again, the GPS now displaying nothing but chaotic white noise. Frustration mixed with a growing sense of dread. It wasn't just that I was lost. It felt like something was deliberately obscuring my path. A flicker of movement in my peripheral vision, a shadow amongst the trees, too quick to identify, solidified my fear. This was more than a navigational error. Driven by a desperate need to understand, and perhaps fueled by foolish bravery, I pushed deeper into Silas's reach. The cottage wasn't simply unsettling. It radiated an almost palpable sense of wrongness. As I approached, the air grew noticeably colder, carrying a faint scent of pine needles and something metallic. The door creaked open with no discernible force, revealing a single room filled with maps, hundreds of them, meticulously drawn in ink on aged parchment. They depicted not just this valley, but surrounding areas, all rendered with an unnerving level of detail, reflecting a time long past. The walls were covered in strange symbols and calculations that seemed to shift subtly as I watched. A low hum permeated the air, vibrating through my bones. Suddenly, a voice, not spoken aloud but directly into my mind, echoed through the cottage. It was a man's voice, old and weary, reciting phrases from one of the maps. North by northwest, 3 degrees east, adjust for declination. It wasn't an instruction. It was a recitation of coordinates as if someone were meticulously charting a course. Panic seized me. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. The voice continued, growing louder, more insistent, until it became clear that the cartographer's error wasn't just a geographical anomaly. It was a deliberate deception, a hidden message encoded in the maps themselves. As I struggled to comprehend what was happening, my eyes fell upon a small wooden box hidden beneath one of the maps. Inside, nestled on velvet lining, lay a single, perfectly preserved human eye, an eye that reflected the unsettling glow of the cottage's interior. Beneath it, a note written in the same shaky hand as the maps. The land remembers, and it demands. The humming intensified, and I realized with horror that I wasn't just observing this place. I was part of its history. The walls seemed to shift again, the maps rearranging themselves before my eyes. Suddenly, the voice stopped. The humming ceased. The maps stilled. Everything was silent except for my ragged breathing. I turned to leave, desperate to escape the suffocating dread of Silas's reach, but the cottage was gone. In its place stood only a blank expanse of forest, identical to the one surrounding it before. The GPS sputtered back to life, displaying my location, miles from where I'd entered the valley. It was as if the entire event had been an illusion, a carefully constructed delusion designed to lure someone into this forgotten corner of Oregon.
Then I noticed it, a single map resting on the ground where the cottage had been. It wasn't rendered on parchment, it was etched directly into the bark of an ancient pine tree. And upon closer inspection, I realized that Silas's reach wasn't a valley at all. It was my own reflection. The final coordinates were not for a place, but for me.
As I reached out to touch the tree map, a figure materialized before me, an older version of myself, his eyes filled with the same chilling knowledge. He didn't speak. He simply pointed to the map, then back at himself. The forest around us began to ripple and distort, reflecting not our present reality, but countless iterations of ourselves, trapped within this endless cycle. The cartographer's error wasn't about a mistake on a map. It was about becoming the map. The last thing I saw before the world dissolved into static was my older self smiling, a knowing, terrifying smile. Then, with a final surge of disorientation, I found myself back in my grandfather's study, staring at the unaltered map of Silas's reach. It looked perfectly normal, yet I knew, with absolute certainty, that it wasn't. The room shifted slightly. A faint, metallic scent filled the air, and on the desk, nestled amongst the maps, lay another human eye, looking directly at me. The title wasn't The Cartographer.